Economic Future, organized by FICIL, and the five largest chambers of commerce for foreign investors in Latvia. To open this discussion, I'd like to invite Zlata Elzņa-Zaširinska, the chairperson of the board of FICIL, to say a few words, please.
Everyone, dear chambers and FICIL members, it's great that you are all here. I think it's very interesting discussions after just closing the High Council, which we had last week. And during the last week, we were discussing very interesting 4 topics which we believe are underpinning and are very important to the Latvian development as a whole. The first, we were talking about energy independence. And we were talking what to do, how to do in terms of not only production of electricity, but the consumption as well. Then we were talking about human capital and whether we have enough people with certain skills which could really foster the growth of Latvia. Then we were talking about the shadow economy and the numbers of the shadow, and we were even joking that, 2.7 billion of revenues or the money of the GDP, which is not there in the shadow economy, doesn't it requires a certain minister of the shadow economy? Yeah, and we were joking with the government, maybe we really need to foster the combating of the shadow economy and how we could do that. And the last but not least, everything is possible only with a great public sector, and therefore public reform was on the top of everything which we were talking about. So, and by that, I just would like to open the discussion with the potential prime ministers of Latvia or their representatives. And I think the topics are there in the ground. So have a nice discussion to all of us, and members, please ask your questions.
Thank you, Zlata. If you could thank you, Zlata, for setting the stage for this discussion. The next 4 years will be challenging for Latvia and the Latvian government and parliament, because we need not only to overcome the consequences of the huge crises of the last 2 years, but to fundamentally reorient the energy profile of the country and deal with long-term structural problems such as the labor force, which is not well aligned with the needs of the economy, that have not gone away because they have not featured in the headlines in the last years. My name is Pauls Rauceps. I'm a columnist for the weekly magazine Ir, and I will be moderating this discussion. And the representatives here of the parties, 6 parties which were leading in the polls in July, the polls made by the company SKDS. And certainly, I think looking at these parties, the core of the next coalition will come from some of the parties that we see here. So I think it's really very logical that these parties should be here today. Representing Jaunā Vienotība, Arvils Ašerādens, the chairman of the party.
Hello.
Representing Progresīvie, Kaspars Priškens, who is a
good morning
prime minister candidate. Representing Attīstībai par, Artis Pabriks, also candidate for prime minister. Representing Zaļo un Zemnieku Savienība is a board member, Viktors Valainis.
Hello.
Representing Saskaņa, Ivars Zariņš, candidate for prime minister. And representing Nacionālā apvienība, Robert Zīle, who is the vice president of the European Parliament and vice chair and board member of Nacionālā apvienība. He, unfortunately, because of his position in the European Parliament, has to leave early, and his position afterwards will be taken by Artūrs Butāns, who is the chairman, chief of staff for the Ministry of Economics, and is also running in the elections and will be competent to answer these questions. The topics for today's discussion are the investment climate in Latvia, energy diversification, and human capital development, which I think cover many of the issues that we need to deal with to have economic security and development in the broadest sense. These are topics of interest to everyone in Latvia, so we should be thankful to the organizers and supporters who made this discussion possible, the Foreign Investors Council of Latvia, and the 5 largest foreign chambers of commerce in the country, the American, the British, the German, the Finnish, the Norwegian, and the Swedish chambers of commerce. A lot of topics, 6 speakers, just a bit more than an hour and a half to cover them all, so the ground rules are essential. I will start by posing questions to the participants about the topics I mentioned. To make sure that we get to hear everyone's responses, there will be a 2-minute time limit to the answers, and I will enforce it. We will take questions from the audience after we have gone over the topics, but during the first part of the discussion, the audience is invited to send in comments or questions using Slido, a system that many of you are no doubt familiar with. I can't promise that I will use all of these comments, but I see this as a way of keeping the speakers honest, because there are a lot of people in this audience who are very knowledgeable experts on the questions we will be discussing here, and if you feel that somebody is being, say, a little economical with the truth, please let me know, and I will be sure to ask them about that. The discussion will be live streamed thanks to the support of the Riga Graduate School of Law and can be watched on the organizer's social media profiles or on the Latvian Public Broadcaster's English language website at lsm.lv. So, without further ado, the first question. Foreign investment continues to flow into Latvia, but at a noticeably slower rate than to Estonia and Lithuania. If you, or some other member of your party, becomes Prime Minister, what will be your #1 priority to improve the investment climate in Latvia? And we're not talking about long-range programs, but policies that can be implemented in the first 6 months of your administration. You have 2 minutes to answer. I'll start with Mr. Ašarādens, please, and I reserve the right to follow-up questions, in which case.
Okay, thank you, Paul. It's not an easy to choose one priority, and I would say there are essential priorities. Really, stop the war in Ukraine, or right now we're talking win the war in Ukraine, and all the issues what arise regarding the security issues. But I will pick up one, and I think is fundamental. That is human capital development. And Jaunā vienotība in our program have a special separate part which is related to this issue. And #1 is we completely have to change employment policy because there is no employment policy in the country. And there is no unit in the state which is responsible for employment policy. Most possible that could be Ministry of Economy. That could be question under discussion. But of course, that and next issue is about unity, which is responsible for realization of this policy, and that of course could be a state employment agency could become responsible for that. Other important issues are in this is continuance of education reforms. There are huge reforms already started. One is in higher education already that really put in focus education, higher education system with the boards, with the councils. We have a new management system there, but most responsible is to analyze, find and answer on the issue why the system, which really produce 60% low, low skill labor, that's need to be answered.
Okay,
and of course,
thank you.
Last issue is healthcare reform. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Zīle.
Yes, so thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So I think the key issue is, of course, security, internal and external, and we will do on any level, on EU level and also on national level, to create stability, which of course create an environment for investment in Latvia also in the future from this point of view. The related point is energy security. I don't use the word independence, but security is more important, is security of supply, and for a reasonable pricing. It's again EU level and also national level. EU level, exactly, our party is working, and on Friday there was a council meeting of energy, which partly already set tasks for European Commission to elaborate very quickly those issues, how to solve it. And also from the practical points of view, it's increase of capacity of Latvian investment agency, also to allowing the new system of remuneration of those people who are working there with a soft part for a kind of premium for the good projects, investment projects in Latvia. This will be done very quickly. And also for the labor mobility, of course related with skills, we will use RFF money, and not only grant money, which for industrial parks and housing around the industrial parks, which is already will be approved very soon, I think even with the current government. But to continue it, we would like to use loan part of RFF, which is 2 billion euros, which Latvia can use on a long-term loans for a recovery fund projects support, and also for the definitely for the labor mobility and skills. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Zile. Mr. Pabriks. No, you're on. He doesn't have. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, just to remind the general environment. I was the Prime Minister's candidate 4 years ago, and I was blocked to become the Prime Minister's candidate because of two populist parties blocking that. I'm trying again. Now, if I will become the President of this country, then...
President? Prime Minister.
Sorry. President, because, well...
He's revealed his secret plan.
These seconds are not on my account.
All right, go ahead.
If I will be the Prime Minister of this country, and you are a serious investor, doesn't matter a big one or a small one, I will do everything possible to make a green corridor for your investment. Now, how can we do this in a short and a long term? First of all, administrative capacities. I hate the bureaucracy which is hindering that myself. So if there will be a bureaucracy and administration hindering investment which corresponds to our strategic national interests, I'll do maximum. You would have also a green corridor to Prime Minister's Bureau. Secondly, I will work together with municipalities. We have 43 municipalities in these countries. Number of them want investment. If they want, they would have to work together again with the national government. Thirdly, of course, our priority and my personal priority, just like in the Ministry of Defense, will be industry. To develop industry, to be capable to produce something ourselves, which means we want export, we want new working places, and we want competition. So I will attach this industry together with your investment. For instance, my agreement with Finnish government about Patria investment, 63 million investment I brought to this country, and we start first time in our history production of military vehicles. We will continue such practice with any kind of investors. I also will bring together our industries, investors together with our higher education, because we need that people which are, let's say, produced in our universities. They know that they are expected in industry, and industry knows what is expected. So, if you're serious, we will create all the conditions for you to invest. If you are not serious, then you can go to Estonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pabriks. Mr. Zariņš, please.
I think in order to realize what is the most important, it is necessary to understand the context in which we have to act. We are facing the challenges, the deepness of which an extension is unfortunately barely understood, especially by politicians. Changes will be so deep, so dramatic, that in order to overcome that, we have to change our attitude and our readiness to response. The existing readiness of power, I think, is deadly harmful for business, successful business in Latvia. Therefore, the first thing we need is to have a new deal between power and the business. What does it mean? As I told, first, the change of attitude. State has to stop treat business like a crooks, which has to be kept in tight fist of rules and regulations. Changing this attitude, we can substantially reduce bureaucracy and administrative burden. The second thing is a power readiness to response, to bring necessary solutions. Again, power has to stop to treat business like a weed, which could grow somehow by itself. The needed solutions for successful business development has to be delivered, starting from those who are long delayed. For example, labor force taxation and labor force availability. We have to be like accountable, reliable, and predictable partners. Power has to be decisive, predictable, and reliable. And I think this is the best way how to secure foreign investments in Latvia and to provide welfare for my country.
Thank you, Mr. Zarinch. Mr. Brishkans.
Good morning once again, and thank you to FICIL and the chambers for this wonderful opportunity. There's many priorities that I could have chosen, but as a modern, green, and social democratic force that's entering national politics, I wanted to emphasize the importance of the Latvian Green Deal. Obviously, within the span of 6 months, we cannot realize all of these long-term investments, but we can put in place a very concrete roadmap. And I want to delineate some of the points that we would like to focus on. First of all, energy transition. And as a Green Party, we believe in renewables. That's why we are modeling our policy on Aristotle's 4 elements. We already have hydropower. We need large-scale investments in wind power, potentially with synergies with the creation and manufacturing of green hydrogen. That also has a very sizable future for Latvia. Solar parks, a complete restart of housing insulation. We must put in place in this roadmap concrete, actionable items to proceed. Green Deal is also not only about energy, it is also about smart, safe, and sustainable electrified mobility and logistics. Many of you, I have had the privilege of cooperating as part of the Rail Baltica project. That's one platform on how we can promote sustainable transport and connectivity in Latvia. Circular economy, including in housing development. Through my times living in Sweden, working for the Latvian Diplomatic Service, I was also always amazed by the Hammarby Sjöstad example in Stockholm. We have a full cycle circular housing development. Latvia has some of these examples today, including in the Riga municipality. That needs to continue. R&D financing for renewables, including for the broadening of the use of wood in construction, both in terms of the domestic use, but also in terms of export products. And most importantly, when we develop this roadmap in the first 6 months of the new parliament, we will involve industry and our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brishkans. Mr. Valainis.
Hello, it's nice to be here today. Our first priority will be about energy sector, about stabilizing the prices in energy sector. We see that is one of the biggest problems at the moment. Next thing what we are looking is banking sector. Of course, all bureaucracy which comes with the legal framework at the moment in banking sector. We are thinking that in regional level we are losing in our competitiveness because of too much bureaucracy which comes with our this banking system that we did in the last years. For our policy, I think we have to start a new conversation with all the business organizations. For the past 4 years, in our view, the coalition, which was representative of this government, which was working for the 4 years, they were fighting between each other, but they were not making dialogue with business organizations. And this is one of the biggest problems at the moment. We are looking at the shadow economy, how can we cut the very high level of the shadow economy, and of course in our view one of the first things what we have to do is cut taxes for the small business enterprises, and with this we think they will come out from the shadow economy to normal economy and they will start to pay taxes. We have this experience already before, and I think this is the moment when we have to do it again. And one of the main priorities from our side will be, of course, regional policy. We think in the last years, regional policy is not big enough. It should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valainis. We've had sort of an overview of the priorities which each of these parties are putting out to attract foreign investment and to help the economy. I would have been happy to hear more precisely about the things that you would do immediately upon taking office in the first 6 months, because many of these things that you said were sort of long-term. Not that that's bad, but we want to see immediate results, and maybe thinking about the next questions, really concentrate on what are the first steps you would take to really convince the foreign investor community that you are changing something and not simply promising some changes far in the future. And now we move on to energy, which is obviously on everybody's minds. I'll have 2 questions for the panelists, and then I'll give everyone a chance to give brief responses at the end, because I'm sure some people will say things that other people disagree with, but those will be brief, and I will keep you to a very short time period to respond. The first question I have about energy, this is an energy and fair competition section, but we'll start with energy. The government has taken a series of steps to support both individuals and enterprises to shield them from the effects of the drastic rise in energy prices. Now the question is, is this enough? Or what more needs to be done beyond what the present government has already done to ensure both security of supply and affordable prices for electricity and gas? Mr. Ziel, I'll start with you since you'll be leaving soon.
First of all, I mentioned already in my introductory words that we have to look on this issue on a short term and medium term. In the short term, meaning we currently are on the stage of the European Council, Energy Council, will decide very soon about the measures which could be used. There is a capping issue for the pricing and maybe also Russian gas pricing separately. And all those issues will be done during September, I'm sure, or early October. So it's a fast-time issue, and we will be very active from a Minister of Economy point of view to do for Latvian interests. So that's why we will definitely, depending from the results on this EU level, we can create an additional support system for individuals and also for the businesses, which is unclear. There could be also some levies on a fossil fuel producers, and also perhaps some levies on a high margin earners or in the electricity sector. So that's why we will look on this development. It would be just step by step. We will look how winter will develop. And in the long term, of course, we have to most important issues, not to make mistakes in the long run, to create overcapacity. I'm speaking not only about electricity, which is particularly, there is currently requirements for additional connections with either with a grid, an electricity sector 4 times higher, around 4 times higher than its Latvian peak time electricity needs. So that is a problem. We can create overcapacity, which will require additional investment for Augsburguma tīkli and also Sadalas tīkli, 2 big enterprises on the delivery side. And at the same time, on the gas sector, we have to look how it will work this winter with the LNG supply, not again to create overcapacity in the gas supply sector, because gas decreased in Baltic area significantly.
Does that mean you're skeptical about the possibility of building an LNG terminal?
The most important is Skult LNG. First of all, it's a 2 years' time, and they have to build it in the best case scenario. They didn't use environment, they didn't react on environment, which was how it was.
Environmental impact assessment.
Impact assessment on environmental impact assessment on the Skult LNG, what they received from ministry in January 2000. So it's 2.5 years they didn't react. So that's why we have to understand how serious are those investors who are developing, and we have to understand it. So and also how we will see how Klaipėda will work and how Finnish Estonian connections with both terminals there.
Okay, I remind you that you will have a chance to respond at the end. So, Mr. Ashranes.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of most
You
critical
don't need 2
issues.
microphones.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Energy security is one of the most fundamental issues of today's economy, and there are 2 aspects. One is energy security, and of course, if you're looking on the war situation in Russia, we're still running with the time of, let's say, to be connected with a Brel system in Russia. It's very important to stabilize the system in order to have a necessary gas capacity if Russia decides deconnect this. Second, of course, is issue with gas, and I think government are made necessary steps in order to start the process with Skult LNG terminal. And I think we have to look into this, and if there is no solution, there's no decision to go fast ahead, I think we have another option, Baltic Connections Grid, company Baltic Connections Grid, or they can build it for self. If you look on a gas market in general, this really are little investment in generally, but this has to be done. And next issue is very important. What we see right now, there is a huge interest from foreign investors to build up different energy production capacities. And we really have to set up a team who really work on this issue. Why it's important? Because we see a lot of production capacities right now are selling energy out of Latvia, and very important to balance all those investors, and they are interested to sell energy in local market in order to reduce deficits. And I think there is one important issue is we really have to work on in development of investment capacity in Latvia. With AmCham is not enough now. It's crystal clear. Already we're talking about housing market. Other thing is energy market, how to help investors to build up their capacities very fast.
Thank you. Mr. Valainis.
First of all, we are totally against Skultas LNG terminal, and not because it's in Skulta. We just don't trust those investors who are now dealing with government about building this terminal. In our view, it has to be a government-owned company who should build this terminal, not private company. This is strategic infrastructure for us, and it should be built by government and operated by some private company. It has to be an open market, but not owned by private company. Second of all, we have to put bigger amount of money into supporting. At the moment, it has to be the first job done. We can see that at the moment, the level which is from government, 440 million to support housing sector and 200 million for the business is totally not enough. If we see that there is 2 billion euros in energy field at the moment, which are the costs which we will have to pay more. We have to put more investments into those sectors, and of course, energy companies. We see that we have to, as soon as possible, we have to put bigger tax for the income for the main energy companies. For example, Latvia's gas, 150 million today income tax what they get. It's not okay from our view. We see that government should take some response in this field, and we can't allow the companies in this situation to make such a big money in their profits.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Valainis. Mr. Briškens.
Yeah, let me break it down into short, medium, and long term. So in the short term, progressives have been speaking about price caps since the beginning of summer. So I'm very happy that both the EU and the current coalition in Latvia is rapidly catching up. The support to the families needs to be strengthened. 2/3 of our families don't have savings in excess of 2 salaries. So obviously, insolvency issues are very much present. So unless we support the families, we may risk getting into a recessionary negative spiral, just like we did in 2008 and 2009. So we believe that the support to both the families and the companies should be thereabouts 3-4% of the GDP, not 2% as is currently offered. The other major element in short term is energy preservation. We see the massive programs launched in Spain, in Germany, these weeks also in Finland. This is a huge opportunity to save up to 15-20% of our energy necessities. If we go into medium term, and obviously the LNG terminal would not resolve our issues for this and the next heating season. So negotiating with the Estonians and Lithuanians in terms of Klaipėda and the upcoming Paldiski capacities is critical. And Latvia, of course, has leverage because of the underground storage in Inčukalns, where also Lithuanians and Estonians are holding their reserves. Investments into wood biomass in district heating. We see that out of 3 terawatt hours that our industry are using in terms of natural gas, 1/3 of that will already, during this season, will be replaced by wood biomass. So that's a trend that needs to continue both on a company level and on a district heating level. Energy efficiency, I already mentioned the restart of the housing insulation program. And long-term, again, facilitating all kinds of investments in renewables. We know that NIMBY is an issue in the Baltic states. You know it best. Not in my backyard attitudes. So as long as the investor has completed environmental impact assessment, there should be no further hurdles to complete those investments.
Thank you, Mr. Priškins. Mr. Zarinč.
Well, yes. Well, in current situation regarding energy, I think there's a quote from Art of War is very much in place. So the strategy without tactics is the longest way to the victory, but the tactic without strategy is just a noise making before defeat. Unfortunately, that's what we see, a lot of noise and no strategy. This, as you have heard, will cost us a lot and will not bring the needed result. What is necessary? It is necessary to have our own energy strategy, which means a clear, reliable, long-term network framework within which we are going to achieve our defined goals. This would secure investments for the energy sector and make them more effective. What is important to understand, it is to settle the most effective solutions, we have to look to regional cooperation. And I'm ready, it concerns for both the gas and electricity, and I'm ready to take a lead to induce such cooperation. Locally, firstly, this is energy saving measures, energy efficiency, and use of local energy resources as much as possible. For example, peat, which costs 20-25 euros for megawatt hour, instead of gas, which costs 10 times more. When fighting with the energy costs, it is important to understand that there are two components of it. One objective caused by external factors, and another caused by our own actions or inactions. The first one we have to deal with, of course, with different various supporting schemes. The second one, just act accordingly. For example, introducing energy crisis regulation, which would reduce that mess what we have right now, these speculations which are overheating the market.
Thank you, Mr. Zarinč. Mr. Papis.
Yes, well, basically, in the world, we have three types of scarce resources, which is water, which is food, and which is energy. The first two, in general, in Latvia, we have enough. The third is a problem. And if I'm looking forward for how we should act today, or rather we should act already yesterday and for the next few months, there is a short-term and long-term perspective. In the short term, of course, we have to guarantee, first of all, that our people survive this winter. This is why we have a capping for gas and electricity prices. I hope that once European Union will adopt something on a general level, perhaps there will be also chances for a certain support over there, but I would not like to rely on that. Secondly, I think we have to ensure that such crises do not appear in future, because practically we are now living in a wartime economy. We have to admit that, whole European continent, because Russia is waging this energy war against us. Now, what was not done enough good with this government, but it still can be fixed. I think there have been too many delays as far as LNG, and my party and me personally, we support this LNG because investors told that they could create this LNG in 12 to 14 months. Now, the general acceptance is that that will take 2 years. So that basically means that the second year is more or less administrative capacity, which includes also state. We have to cut it as much as we can. Secondly, we could, of course, deal with this project already in the spring, just like we could deal with gas insurances. We did not do this. The third thing, what we have to do for the longer-term perspective is renewables, which is wind, solar, and of course everything which comes from our wood material. So as far as wind and solar, they have been huge delays, I must admit that, and Prime Minister must admit this too, in giving out permissions for investors to work, because they have been bought a lot of permissions from number of kind of investors which were not contributing anything. Now, finally, under our pressure from my party, they freed about 160 megawatt. It's not enough. If there's investor, if somebody is among you who would like to invest in these renewables, government must do everything to let you work immediately. And more in a longer term, our plan is, just a moment, our plan is in the next 3 years to get about 1,000 megawatts, not to stop our industry. If needed, I'm supporting also collaboration with Estonians as far as nuclear plant for modern capacity. Let's say once this nuclear terminal about 400 or 500 megawatts, that's workable in 8 years.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Public. Actually, the question that you raised, and I'm seeing a lot of this in the Slido questions as well, is specifically about competition policy and the degree to which the government helps or hinders private investment and ensures free competition. And I'd like to make the next round of questions about that, because as we see, because of the energy crisis, Latvia is lagging in solar and wind, largely because many private investors have had a very difficult time getting through the bureaucratic thickets of the Latvian government that has set up to set up these sources of energy. At the same time, now, because of the crisis, we see a joint venture with Estonia about a wind farm offshore. We see a joint venture between Latvenergo and the Latvian state forests. I mean, for a foreign investor, they might say, look at this, we weren't allowed to invest before, and now the Latvian government's going to take everything over and push us out. Is this a fair characterization of the situation? And if not, what will you do to ensure that there's free competition on the market of this? Mr. Zila, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, so it's important issue on electricity sector to keep competition according EU rules, and we will try to do it. Joint venture Latvenergo and Latvia's measure, what I think was very good, because it's keep value-added part of this renewable energy. Wind energy will be connected with Latvia, which is very important. And also we would like to create a cluster of businesses around it, because otherwise we import in all the wind energy equipment and we will build generators, or investors will build, which is good as well. But we have to keep about our interests and to develop also value-added part on this wind energy sector. Of course, we have to limit reasonable, as I told, for transmission, not overcapacity, because currently it was more than 3,000 megawatts requirements, which will be difficult to sell because high power grids connected with Sweden and also with Estonia and Finland are not enough to sell so much electricity on a reasonable price or Nord Pool. That's why I think we have to be careful to keep the target for 2030 around 1,000 megawatts from wind and solar developing will be for more business-oriented, not to sell to the market so much, but to keep for businesses and also households to keep their own demand for this electricity. And this is the most important issue. And I would like also to remind that for the competition policy, we already signed recently during 1 year with Estonia and with Lithuania so-called energy support agreements, if I correct, Arturs will say from Minister of Economy more precisely, but which describe how we will behave as neighbors and connected in situation of crisis of energy. It's coming from directive of European Union since 2017, and we did it during the last year. So that's I think it's created not a totally new situation. We have to cooperate with our neighbors on energy sector, not to compete so much.
Okay.
To really keep competition and fair competition is a critical issue, and what we have in Jaunas Vienotības program, that is finally we hope we will succeed to bring big state entities to the capital market, and at least 20% will we will make some IPO on that, and that I hope will work. Second, of course, is very important to start move in make a move in if you look on energy, state-owned energy company Latvenergo, and separates the grid, distribution grid company from the main sales company, because we see there some, some tensions between new arrived energy companies. And of course, a very important issue, it's a minor detail, but of course a very important issue is find a solution for local communities, made them interested in wind and big wind and solar energy farms, because normally they object and say, no, we don't want to them, we're not interested, we can't see our interest in that. And then we have to find out solution how to make them interested in. It could be, and I don't know, whatever, some kind of local society supporting system, or to at least some micro income generation for local communities. Otherwise, that will be a big problem, because we will avoid all those necessary bureaucratic formalities. But when the decision will be necessary on local communities, there will be a problem. What we saw so far, those I think is very important issues.
Thank you, Mr. Valainis.
In our view, this what was raised by Mr. Asherans about local communities, it's we think we have to make sure that all those projects are built in interest with the people who lives in those places. In our view, there is no problem with local communities. We have to just keep working with those companies, and there is just a few projects which was rejected from the local communities, but I was in those places where they wanted to build those energy parks, and I really understand those people who live beside them, or how it affects our nature. What we are thinking, we have to, I totally agree with Mr. Pabriks, what he said about that system today. There is many companies which took the license to build some parks or something, whatever, but when they're coming, for example, in Jelgava, at the moment, this is my hometown, I know it very well, there is 50 million investments in solar project, but it's almost stopped because somebody took all the license before them. And the investor who really comes with the money and wants to build something, he can't because the licenses are out. And this is not normal situation. I know the farmers which want to build energy field for themselves, but they can't do it because the licenses are out, and these are really big companies, and it's not normal at the moment. We have to look who took those licenses, and are they really want to build something. And in our view, Latvijas valsts meži, Latvenergo, it sounds very good, but in our view, the private investors should take those projects and invest their own money. Maybe there is not so much need for the government investments into this field. This is what we are like to mention about it.
Mr. Briškans?
Yeah, well, the red alerts were all over the place already in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea. But for more than 8 years, both the current and the previous government were just merely paying lip service to renewables. Now, of course, everyone is about renewables. Now we want all of that investment, including 1 billion investment through Latvenergo and Latvian state forests. But we need to recognize that there's, well, I can compare this to a student trying to cram a study year full of material on the last night. It's the right dynamic, it needs to be done, but we also need to recognize that there has been a lot of incomplete homework. The fact that the two state enterprises are kind of spearheading the creation of this new industry is fine. I mean, they can create 1,000 megawatts of wind energy, but it needs to come in synergy and without any kind of competitive advantages with the private sector. Just this year, I participated in the two high-profile events where investors from the Netherlands and Denmark, arguably the two global leaders in wind energy, came here to Latvia and recognized the potential that exists in creating large-scale wind parks, including offshore wind parks that have the additional possibility of efficiently creating green hydrogen. So of course we support that. We also support the idea that state enterprises or the state creates polygons where it creates all of the necessary grid interconnections, all of the necessary access infrastructure, also perhaps funding through EU, Repower EU program, CEF Energy program, Altum. I'm always amazed at what KfW has done in Germany through the Energiewende. We need to follow that example. And also we need to focus on manufacturing opportunities. We need to manufacture the solar panels here, wind turbine components and assembly here, wood biomass products here, not just importing them. And then we can create the Green Deal, not just as a platform to advance our energy self-sufficiency, but also as an industrial mission that will create jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Zariņš.
Well, I think it's obvious that what we see now is the consequences of lack of energy strategy. So if state is unable to define, for example, the role of renewables, how much we rely on renewables, how much we rely on gas, shall we rely on gas or not, of course, then investors cannot plan their investments. Once there is a clear picture, so we can then investors can rely on that framework what the government has created, and there is no need then for the state, for the government to intervene in this market only if the private investors are not ready to do this. At the moment, what we see, the energy prices is such that there are a lot of private investors ready to enter in this market. Therefore, there's question why the state has to participate with those projects. I think the most important will be from the state side is to provide what is needed for those private projects. As Kaspar said, firstly, these are connection capacities. And again, clear, understandable framework within which those investors can operate. So they can understand how they can assess those capacities for the connections, how they can build their capacities, generation capacities. The clear understanding what is needed, I think, the first for the private investors, and that is what state has to provide. And intervene only if we see that the private investors are not able to achieve those goals we need.
Thank you, Mr. Zariņš. Mr. Pabriks.
Thank you. Well, I think we hear here quite a bit of correct ideas how to proceed. My most critical view is simply that direction is correct, but what we have been missing in the last years is really this efficiency and responsibility to make those decisions, because matters not only the correct thinking and correct talking, matters also the correct decision making timely. Time matters. So from my perspective and from my party's perspective, at least EBIPAR, I think request for energy will only grow because we want our industry, and that will be a priority for the next government if we would have something to stay in this government. I'm even not speaking about the prime ministership. And of course, since we are moving towards, electric automobiles and etc., this request will grow also in other areas. So we will need to produce energy. I think that the best producer here always will be a private investor. So that means if the private investor understands what he or she wants, if this investor comes and if there is any problems with local authorities or government administration, or some kind of possibility to combine this with some industrial project in the region, government must be there to support and immediately. So take away all these caps that we have now regarding the different administrative problems. It's our problem as a government to solve it. And this is what, sorry to say, I have been doing for the last years in the Ministry of Defense, just trying to free hands. Because if you look through this defense perspective, you cannot afford simply to live in a kind of illusionary world. Reality matters. And this I would like also to put in the energy sector and energy policy for the next government.
Yes, this past years have been a wake-up call to the fact that reality does in fact matter. I promised everybody a chance to respond. Does anybody have something they want to say regarding what the other participants said? If not, then I will go on, except I have one question from the audience that I want to address to Mr. Zariņš. The question is regarding, you mentioned peat as a source of energy, but as we know, the European Commission's plan for the green transition sees a decrease in the use of peat because of its role in absorbing greenhouse gases. How do you reconcile these two?
Thank you very much for this question. Well, the truth is that it's not the European Commission request us. It is that we, our government, agreed to step out from the peat by receiving compensation for this. It seems to be 180 millions. Yes. What I think it's not the right decision, and we have to do like Finns do this. We have to convince European Commission that peat is our renewable resource, which is in fact is renewable resource if we are using it in a certain extent in which it renews every year, and we have to stay on that this is our renewable resource, and there should not be these CO2 emission quotas for that. It is possible. It's just political will is needed, and I think it's the appropriate time, appropriate situation to do this.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to the next section, which is human capital development. A fundamental problem for the Latvian economy that will only get worse in the coming years is the shortage of workers. We hear this both from foreign investors and from local companies. There are bureaucratic hurdles to bringing in employees from abroad. There are tax and infrastructure issues that hamper regional mobility within Latvia, and programs for retraining workers are generally considered to be ineffective. Again, in the first 6 months, and I would like to emphasize this because we hear a lot about medium, long-term programs, but in the first 6 months, what would you do to implement and address the problem of connecting people, either from abroad or from different parts of Latvia, with jobs where they in fact are? I'll start with Mr. Zariņš, please.
Thank you. Actually, I think this challenge is so deep, and the solutions are so delayed that within 6 months, I doubt that it would be possible to solve it. What is obvious that there is no resources, if we look locally, to fill up this gap which is needed in a labor market for these STEM specialities. There are dozens of thousands specialists needed, and if you look at the situation that this year, those who passed the tests in physics who graduate the school and passed tests of physics with at the needed level were 252 persons. So there is nowhere to get them. I think if we look at this situation realistically, as artists told, we have to be real, then we have to think about what I call the smart immigration strategy, how to attract needed specialists from abroad. And one of such, I think, very powerful and effective instrument is higher export of higher education, so that we attract here the brains by attractive study programs. They study here, they spend their money here, they pay here for staying, and we have chance in parallel to involve them in our labor market, proposing them to stay here. I think that is the most effective and probably one of the only solutions how to solve that problem of labor force.
Thank you. Mr. Pabriks.
Thank you. Well, I am definitely nationally oriented politician, but as far as the labor market, first, it's very clear that there are two problems. One problem is a general lack of labor. Secondly is this correlation between our education system and what is required in a labor market and in enterprises. And of course, there is no perfect country in the world. Everybody has problems. But this is why, from my party's perspective, we would like to do everything to assist our education system to rearrange itself. So we are in colleges and universities producing people what our economy needs. At this moment, this target is not reached. And believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I'm a professor in university myself. So for instance, in higher education, I believe that there are no borders for nation states, so in that respect, if we have a good professors abroad, English, German, I don't care which language, we have to bring them here. If it is a technical education, we have to put together our industries with this technical education, just like in this case, I like a German system, not in other cases, but in this case, I do like. As far as migration, I support moderate migration, and I would say that now we are in certain way blessed with, sorry to say, refugees from Ukraine. We have in our schools 4,000 Ukrainian children learning in Latvian language. Our duty would be that these students and these families stay here in this country. They are integrating in our labor market, and also other students in medical institutions or somewhere else. I want them to stay in my country. So we have to welcome them. So that would be the smart migration process as I would see that. And of course, the re-education of our people, because I think in 21st century, not only in Latvia, but in many other countries, education doesn't correspond anymore to the needs of our development.
Mr. Butans, question to you, especially in view of the fact that the National Alliance is often seen as the party against the policies that Mr. Publix and Mr. Zarinch were proposing here right now.
Yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry.
Yeah, several things. One, reskilling also is really important, and oh yeah, I don't need it.
Yeah.
I saw your faces, so.
No, you don't.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, he's
So
a
we
national
are-
guard anyway, I guess, so you can talk freely.
Yeah, so, yeah, reskilling, I think we need more effort and more help from the private sector. I think government needs to delegate some functions for the private sector to help with the reskilling, more efficiency and more, I think more better also in regions. And the second thing is labor mobility and skills, because mostly we see that we have a problem in the regions. Riga and a few other bigger cities, we have a less problem with the education, but we cannot like separate Riga from the other country, and I think the big potential lies there. And yeah, also STEM and the physics was mentioned. I totally agree with that, and I think we have to make this exam mandatory, and we have done already some few steps on that. Together with Latvenergo, we also have put a new equipment in the regional schools to make some interest in the kids already from the beginning in the physics and STEM industries. And one really important thing what I think we should do immediately is to make a platform for the upcoming students where they can see the tendencies in the market, salaries, vacancies, and because when you finish the school and you have to go to the high school, there's 1 month when you need to take this big decision. Your parents are pushing you, the society and everything, and you have to make this big decision. There is no platform, no website with analytics. What about tendencies in the market? And so we need to put the education that the government pays only for these places in the high schools where what is necessary in the labor market.
Okay,
and,
thank
and
you.
the students
Okay.
are informed that before they make a decision.
Great, thank you. Mr. Rashid Adams.
Okay. As I said at the beginning, labor, employment and human capital development policy should be established, and agency responsible for that should be established. And there are a number. First issue is we need data. We need data, and it's very important to create a system which is already other countries have. That is data which monitoring employment situation. What is a plan in a company plan to hire on or otherwise. Or another important data system is what is actually more important than that is about potential necessary competencies which arise in a labor market. And that is important to understand which professions leaving market or which is coming into market. And that's such a data will allow the country take a maneuver in order to reskilling people and create a system where we can concentrate on state resource and invest in particular reskilling needs for the labor market. Second very important issue is to really build coordination system in education to really to make education system work for employment and increase of labor skills. Because as I said, if we look on one particular generation step in education system, at the moment, let's say if we look at one generation step, is more than 59% are having do not have any professional qualification. We can qualify them low-skilled labor, and that's already we started to work, and that is one is we filling the gaps with STEM. Other is we really to making new criteria for a higher education system and a professional education system for future employment, and those data are monitored too.
Mr. Valainis.
First of all, we have to stop blaming our schools about that they haven't done something right, especially in the regions. We have to stop this policy. Last 4 years, our government shut down or reorganized 240 schools in our regions. And they are still pushing up to close down the schools in the regions. We have to change our mind that we have to spend more time thinking about how to help them, about how to develop schools in the regions, not about how to close them down. And if you are thinking about bigger productivity in the regions, without schools it will be impossible. There are a lot of challenges in the regions, and we have to help them, not pushing them down, which was 4 years policy and still going. We have to stop this. Second of all, about immigration policy, we have to start with our immigration policy. We don't have immigration policy at all at the moment. All Latvian immigration policy comes from one elections to another elections. Some situation comes up, then everybody is making some decisions in immigration policy. First of all, we have to make agreement what we really need, what kind of people we really need, in which fields we really need, with the farmers. We are talking about the farmers. When the season comes in the regions, there should be some working force which has to come in somehow, that we won't lose in our competitiveness between Poland, Lithuania. We have to, first of all, tell what we need, and then we will start to think about how we will get there. So we need immigration policy, which is not done yet. This has to be done first thing.
Thank you, Mr. Valainis. Mr. Priškans.
Yeah, well, as investors and employers, you know very well that the Latvian employment market is a paradox. We have youth unemployment in excess of 15%, higher than the EU average. In Latgale, it is in excess of 20%. We have people with disabilities and special needs who are locked out of the employment market because of inaccessible environment, mobility, and other opportunities. We have hundreds of thousands of Latvians living abroad in forced emigration. We have Ukrainian refugees, and at the same time, you are struggling to find the labor force. So obviously, there is a significant mismatch between the supply and the demand of employment. So something that can be done. In order to address these least privileged groups, we are proposing a permanent minimum wage job guarantee program. In 2008, during the previous crisis, we had the so-called 100 lots program. It was institutionalized slavery, in my view, but it was also a very valuable proof of concept. So that kind of policy can establish the lower threshold to make sure that these less privileged groups can enter the employment market. And at some stage, they will be able to offer their services also to you. Subsidized on-the-job training for Latvia. Government subsidizing companies in the private sector in order to take on students on on-the-job training schemes. They work in many places, in the Nordics, in Germany, among other places. Then we are promoting, well, Latvia has some of the world's highest tax incidences on labor. Our most valuable resource, our salaries, our labor, is taxed at the highest rates in Europe, even despite the progressivity. So that focus needs to shift elsewhere. For example, on unproductive capital. We have many different land hoardings in the city of Riga which prevent actual developers from using that. Andrejsala, Mežaparks, also Valmiera, Cēsis, so many different places. And of course, immigration. The nationalist parties have always been stifling immigration, both high-skilled immigration, but also the 30,000 less skilled workers that we need to complete Rail Baltica in the Baltic states. So we need to address that with very active employment policies.
Thank you, Mr. Brishkans. To complete this round, I have a question with just a very short answer from each of you regarding responsibility for reskilling and retraining people, because this assignment in the Latvian government is very fragmented between various ministries, between various agencies, and so forth. Do you think there should be one person responsible for the labor market? And if so, who should that be in the government? Mr. Valainis.
Minister of Economy.
Minister of Economy, Mr. Brishkans.
Well, it shouldn't be one person, yeah. It's the Ministry of Economy, but it also should be, since it's a horizontal issue, should be under the direct supervision of the Prime Minister as well.
Mr. Zarinj.
I agree with previous.
They didn't say the same thing. So, Mr. Fabriks.
Well, look, I think one of our problems is...
No. One of our problems is talking too much.
But then don't tell me that you did not understand or I didn't explain. Yes, I think Minister of Economics with direct supervision of Prime Minister.
Okay.
And I'm ready to do it.
You agree with previous.
Something about some feedback. Mr. Butans.
Yeah, well, now it's Ministry of Welfare, as far as I can see. And as a Ministry of Economics, we would be happy to take it on our side.
Mr. Rashanas.
We have to look into more flexible government model in next let's say, political period. And I would say there could be special minister for employment. Special minister for employment.
Okay.
That's why Karinj didn't arrive.
So, I promised you a chance to respond to something. Any response? Okay, very good. We have about half an hour left, so that I can open the floor to questions. I saw some questions in Slido that I think would be more appropriate for you to address in person. First person, second person, if we get third person, fourth person. Okay, so right there first.
Hello,
if you could take the microphone because
Hello,
we're being filmed.
I'm Alice Krumiņa. I represent AmCham, a healthcare working group, and let's go back to Latvia's economic future. We all know that public health is a very important, very significant indicator and driver for economic future. So my question is, your top 3 priorities for increasing healthcare financing and how to improve Latvia's public health indicators.
Who is the question addressed to, please?
Only one? Can I ask only one?
Well, if you, I want to give as many people a chance to ask a question as possible, so that if you give it to everybody, we will never get to the second question. So
short
yes, please, just one.
Short answers for everybody.
30
Okay,
seconds.
Mr. Pabriks.
Yes, thank
Please.
you. So, now, ladies and gentlemen, that's really a serious thing. And I would say point number 1, we should not think in our strategy as far as health only for curing people, but trying not to make them sick. So this is the first precondition. Secondly, I think there are a number of things which are critical. For instance, starting with this winter, they should not choose, people should not choose between warm in their rooms and their medication. So there must be a support for medication. So they could buy it. Thirdly, I think it's important for our regions because we are kind of scattered society in a large territory. We must guarantee that every person in a countryside can reach emergency assistance in the right time. At this moment, we have one black spot, which is around Alūksne region, where is also our garrison. This is why I know this. So there's a hospital level should be lifted up. And the next thing is we lost quite a bit of support for palliative things and also for cancer issues because of COVID. So those should be the priorities. So I will stop now.
All right, great.
This is a major thing.
Yeah, because as I see that there's a great deal of interest to answer, but briefly, Mr. Valines, briefly answer.
We have to find new money in the system because our previous government, which where we were working, was we made system about social tax was 1%, and we have an insurance system. This government cut it off, but didn't put anything instead, just borrowing money, and that's it. We have to make a new financing system for the health industry, and we have to make system that regional hospitals, which are in the large cities, take care of the other regional hospitals which are around. In COVID-19, they showed very good results in this, and I think that's the future, how to organize regional health system.
Great, thank you, Mr. Briškens.
Yeah, first we have to change the mentality. There's no such thing as healthcare expenditure. It's healthcare investment. So we need to move to 8% of GDP spending within the span of 2 CIMAs. So that's 0.5% increase each year. And then, usually you think in terms of the healthcare system, in terms of the 3 factors, quality, price, and accessibility. And as progressives, we are also bringing the equality factor. Because in Latvia, we have some of Europe's highest out-of-pocket payments. Some people cannot afford that. And also, of course, inaccessibility of doctors in the regions. So that needs to change, in addition to, of course, thinking about healthcare preemptively with a healthy lifestyle and opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Zariņš. Very briefly.
Yes, very brief. I think the digitalization process of healthcare is very important. It will show the real situation, the real mess what we have. Those data, what Arvils are telling, is very important to make the right decisions and optimization of this system.
Okay, very good. Moving on. Next question, please. And if you could,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you had something? Okay, very good. Very quickly, Mr.
Yeah, 3 things. So one is more financing on the regions. Second thing, we have to cut out the alcoholism, what is taking out the people from the labor. And the third thing is sports. I read on the media that on some schools, 30% of the kids are not going to the sports. They have a paper from the doctor that they cannot go there. I'm not sure if it's always, yeah.
It's not a
Legit.
Yeah,
It's a good
yes.
paper.
Very
Always.
good, Mr. Nunash.
I think sector need fundamental reforms. We feel really sorry for last years. We didn't find agreement with our partners on state insurance model, like Estonian built state insurance model to be put in place. Now we really have a very fragmented system. Results are really very, very bad if you look at systematic results. And we see state insurance model, second consolidation of hospitals in 2 units, and first level doctors got under responsibility of local governments.
Very good, thank you. Next question, if you could identify yourself, the organization you represent, and who the question is addressed to.
Baiba Strupiša, FICIL tax work group co-leader, also settlement negotiator, conflict mediator, and a lawyer. And my question is addressed to, if at least 2 could be Pabriks and Mr. Briškens. With Ašrādens, I had already a chance to speak about it beforehand. So. And the question is, we see Cabinet of Ministers as a team in order to see sustainable solutions in all these 3 topics which we already discussed today. And the question is, if you are members of Cabinet of Ministers, what would you do or what you need in order to act as actual team towards the same goal? Because solutions which we heard today are not always in the same line.
How do you make the cabinet into a team?
Yeah, well, there are some things that I think, and we are, of course, we're very much oriented towards cooperation. we want to be part of the new coalition. I think we can bring a lot of great new ideas into the coalition. So we are ready to cooperate with a broad range of partners. And we believe that there are some subjects that should stay above inter-party politics. I mean, defense is one. Our security, including our energy security, including our drive towards energy self-sufficiency to a large degree as possible, is one such item. The other such item is a new industrial and innovation policy, something that we are bringing. We don't know all the answers. We actually want to have a social dialogue with all the different stakeholders in order to arrive at a more ambitious, more forward-looking, more technologically and export-oriented industrial policy. And here we want to identify both the horizontal challenges that we need to address, such as the new Green Deal, digital transformation, development of the startup communities, cooperative development in agriculture and forestry.
That's all very nice, but that doesn't really have to do with making the cabinet into a team.
Well, aligning around ideas which go beyond the inter-party politics, because something that we have observed with the current government is that oftentimes in order to maintain the coalition, the decision-making strives at the lowest common denominator. And that is, of course, yes, it does maintain coalition stability, was arguably very important during the COVID years, but it was done at the expense of development. So in these times, we need to rally behind critical common ideas.
Okay. Common
and we can
ideas.
do that.
Mr. Pabriks.
Madam, now I have to be very direct, and not all Latvians like the direct talk, but I do. And you know, yes, we have been working in this government for the last 3-4 years because we did not have another chance. And I understand very much the responsibility of Krišjānis Kariņš and how difficult, of course, it is to lead a coalition of 3, 4, or 5 parties, because there will be always a problem if you have a number of parties. But we also must understand that a prime minister is not just some kind of a secretary which is leading once per week meeting of cabinet of ministers. Prime minister must be a leader even in a group or government which consists of number of parties, and must take also a co-responsibility. And with co-responsibility, I understand that if there is something where you have to coordinate issues across horizontally existing ministries, then this is the only sole responsibility of Prime Minister and not of some kind of a minister who cannot simply tell other ministries to do a certain job. And this is a problem for the current government. One of the problems that there is not this co-responsibility, there is delays, and there is sometimes, I would say, a fear to take this responsibility, rather, you know, to simply tell that somebody from these ministers is guilty, and, sorry for a few seconds, and too much responsibility put on the administration and bureaucracy. Cabinet of ministers, it's a political decision maker, and not that somebody is coming from the bureaucracy and telling us what to do. This is not
very good. Thank
plausible.
you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Valens has something to add very briefly, please.
Then you will have time to work for the real questions, not for the populist questions. And this was the main problem for this coalition. They are fighting between each other because of populist agenda, but they didn't have time to work with business organizations, municipal organizations, social organizations. They didn't have time for that.
Okay, very good. Mr. Zariņš.
Yes, if Saskaņa will lead the government, this government will just be doomed to be a team, because we can be changed, we can be dismissed, which is not possible now for this coalition. And that's why this coalition can do whatever they want. They don't have to work as a team.
Okay. Next question over there. Thank you.
Hamid Lajavardi, American Baltic Investments. First, I want to thank the panelists for giving us the opportunity to listen to description of their issues. I want to thank the esteemed moderator for keeping things together. Thank you.
Now I want to keep things moving, please.
And the question goes.
Underlying the issues we've discussed, in my opinion, is corruption. And that hasn't been addressed. I really want to know specifically how you plan to reduce corruption, particularly in the energy sector. But there are other sectors, I'll just mention them extremely briefly: shadow economy, the green energy, foreign investors, underpaid or unpaid taxes, and just plain graft. How will you challenge these? Now, this is a big discussion. I don't expect a lot of answers. But can I have the commitment of the people who want to be prime ministers that you will tackle this issue seriously? It cannot be taken away, but at least it can be reduced.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question is clear, and if I could just add, the government has been sitting on the anti-corruption strategy for 2021 to 2024 for over a year. It was submitted by CNAB last year, hasn't been even looked at in the Council of the State Secretaries, let alone the, so what will you do? Mr. Russian, I'll start with you this time. Very briefly.
Yeah, if we come to the root, then one of the issues that is not addressed, that is capacity of investigation authorities, that's, I mean, police. And what we see, all the issues like cartel issue or others, the capacity of those people who really work there and financial, let's say, compensation, what we see there, that brings to the situation where the documents are brought to the court with the state prosecutors. They are really, how to say, not enough to defend the state position. And I would say the number one is really to really increase capacity of investigation authorities.
Mr. Botans.
Yes, I can totally agree with Mr. Asheradens, and also think that whistleblowing also is, now we have a law, but we also need to more to spread it out. What does it mean and how can you use it? Because I think we haven't done that as good as we could. And in the regions, I also heard from a lot of small companies, like a family, really local, 5-person companies, that they say, hey, we cannot survive if we pay all the 100% taxes what we do have. So probably it also comes together sometimes with this labor tax as well.
Mr. Pabriks.
Well, it's a question about investigation priorities, and this is one thing. So we should not always look for the small kind of bureaucratic problems when there exist some larger ones. But I also would like to remind that every country has corruption issues. So I would not here tell that Latvia is the worst place to invest. It's not. And the last point, Corruption Bureau is directly reporting to the Prime Minister. So Prime Minister also should take care of this.
Mr. Zarinch.
Well, we can continue elaborating new and new regulations, making new and new institutions to fight with corruption, but it doesn't work. It will not work because fish rots from its head. And what we need to have responsible government and responsible power is that possibility to change it. Once those who are the power knows that they can be changed if they are not doing what is necessary, if they are doing things which are not acceptable for society, they will be changed. Things will start to change. While we don't have such possibility in our country, nothing will change. You will see, you will hear all those promises for 10 years. I am hearing those promises for 10 years. The problem with labor force, problem with taxation, and so on and so on. Nothing will change.
Okay. Mr. Bridgekans.
2 examples and a pledge. I've spent many years trying to attract global construction companies to participate in Rail Baltica. Many of them rejected my offer because they don't want to work in conjunction with local cartelized companies and ruin their reputation in process. The other example is the unbelievable stoppage of the Riga territorial development plan by the regional ministry, which has forestalled at least 100 million worth of investment. Some of you are involved in that. And clearly with potential indications of gambling interests behind that decision. So my pledge is, and I have spent years not just talking about corruption, I have actually in my professional career fought against corruption, for good governance. So my pledge is that progressives will never have any covert and corrupt interests underpinning our decisions. What we call it is politics with our own hands. And this is something we want to bring into Latvian politics, zero tolerance to corruption.
Mr. Valainen, and I would just like to note that this is a particularly apt question for you, since your candidate for Prime Minister, who is not here, has been convicted in the first instance, he has appealed, of serious corruption charges.
In our view, we have to raise capacity of all those who are into this field, like salaries, not only for this corruption bureau, but for the policemen as well. There's a lot of fields which are missing, and their salary too low to act that they will get some good results into those fields. We have to raise salaries in many more fields which are still missing. Maybe we don't hear about them, but they are still working, and we think they could do their job better if they got better salaries. The question was about the shadow economy. We see that one of the main thing is the small business enterprises which are out of normal economy into the shadows. And the only way how we can get back them, we have to get on the dialogue with those industries, and we have to thinking what's the tax level, what they can't pay. At the moment, the tax level is too high for them to pay, and we can see it in many fields. COVID-19 took them out from the normal economy. We have to get them back, and this is what we have made agreement with the biggest business organizations, and we are contacting them about that today.
No response about Mr. Lemberg?
He is fighting now with this in the trial. Like, let him do that. We'll see how it will end. We can see that National Party, they had one of their leaders fighting for 10 years, and only in the third this level he was.
It's not comparable.
Yes, but
okay.
Let him
fine.
do.
All right, fine. I had a question here, I believe. Yes, please.
Dear candidates, I'm Juridis Miezains. I represent one of the peat extractors in Latvia, a company La Flora. And regarding all of this heard today, there's one question arising. How can companies trust planning documents? Because Latvia has this planning document, National Energy and Climate Plan. That's a long-term energy strategy. But at one point, the cabinet of ministers can overrule, change their mind, and give up peat for energy during this huge energetic crisis. And this is a very bad signal for companies that can really help this year. And there are many entrepreneurs that are taking it on their own risk and their own, responsibility to gather peat, to substitute biomass, whose price is astronomical, availability is low, and there are municipalities that will use it. But how can you see a way out of this currently? Because we are currently facing challenges in energy sector, especially in central heating, that aren't comparable. And to address question to one of the candidates?
Yes, please, because I see a lot of hands, and I'd really like to give everybody a chance. So just one,
This will be then Mr. Pabrik, says he spoke about the peat in April, and his party is representing the Ministry of Environment. That was one of the Just Transition Fund leading ministries. Thank you.
Okay, Mr.
Yes,
Pabrik,
well,
very briefly.
very easy to answer this. As far as the peat use for energy, I think that this is not the most efficient source in general, and we can use it for many other purposes. But if my memory is correct, then since we are in whole continent here going forward for more green and sustainable policies, which is correct policies, and if I remember correctly, this decision made by Cabinet of Ministers, then the plan to take out peat of energy, materials and heating starts only in 2028. And if my memory is correct, then this is enough long time for industries to rearrange their work. And at this moment, actually, how much peat is used for energy? I think it's very, very small percentage, if maybe 1%, maybe even less. So I don't see here a problem, and I think that if we are speaking about energy provision, we have a lot of other directions where we can invest, and 2028, it's a good proposal from this Cabinet of Ministers, despite of my criticized lack of efficiency from time to time.
Okay, very good. Next one. And then, no, first and then.
Yes, thank you. Paul Smiklaszewicz, Vice President of AmCham, and also Chief Investment Officer at Blue Orb Bank. One thing that nobody's mentioned here, there's been a lot of plans in terms of spending more money in certain directions. There's been talk of trying to alleviate the energy crisis, which should have been foreseeable. I hold the previous government in, especially Mr. Publix, if you talk about our defense capability and your talk of always having raised that issue, and I think quite rightly, the fact that nothing was done in terms of energy security was a very large missed opportunity. We face the burden of that today. One thing that none of you have mentioned is the fact that interest rates are rising. So we see Latvian households and investors that will have to, and industry will have to pay more for energy. That's going to happen in the foreseeable future. But also mortgage rates will rise. The cost of capital will rise. So I'd like to hear what you have to say about how we can alleviate the price on households, but also when you want to attract investment, at rates of return that are now going to be higher because of higher interest rates. How do you approach that, A, for households, and B, for attracting investors?
Who is the question addressed to? Just one person.
The question will be addressed to, I'd like Mr. Asheradins to answer this, because in the finance ministry there's been very tight purses. There's been a policy that hasn't necessarily been stimulative to the Latvian economy, saying that there is no money. Well, now money is going to get more expensive. So if you weren't willing to spend before, which has been to the detriment of the Latvian economy, what will you do now when rates are even higher?
Okay, Mr. Asheradins.
Well, first of all, yeah, you ask a very complex issue, and number one is what we foresee now is inflation generated hit to economical development. We slowly going in. I can't say we can't say how big recession, but at least we see the figures are slowing down at the moment. And of course, this rise an issue is how to handle the inflation and same time stimulate economy. And of course, we see the general attitude from the European Union will be, how to say, rising interest rates, and we see debate on even higher and higher. And second, of course, there will be demand for the governments for the fiscal policy in order to stop inflation. In this situation, it's a really crucial issue how to help economy and households. And if we speak about households already, the package has been done. Other issue is price cap. It's already under examining. It looks like we will have to introduce price caps for energy. Second is how to help economical sector to survive what was done during the COVID period. That is an open question at the moment.
Okay, next, right there.
How do you help?
Right,
Higher mortgage rates. Higher mortgage rates. We're not talking about that yet. It's a huge issue.
Any, just one sentence, no answer?
No answer.
Okay, next question there.
Thank you. Ina Maring, Norwegian Embassy here in the Riga.
Sorry, from where?
Norwegian Embassy.
Thank you, madam.
It's very tempting to ask a question about gender equality, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask a question about whether you are worried about the low percentage that are probably going to vote at this election, and if so, what are you going to do about it? And I would like my esteemed moderator to put the question to the right candidate.
Well, I will ask Mr. Butans about this, since he's been stopped.
All right. Well, now in my campaign, we drive around and meet people, and I see those reactions, and a lot of those I think as a member of the new generation who comes into the politics, I have to pay the price for the previous generation who didn't do what people wanted and what they were told to do. And actually now it's hard for a person who has went to the election several times and nothing has changed, that to say to him like, hey, I've been around, I've been to Europe, I studied in Australia, I come here with my own thoughts. I don't have anyone on my back who's paying for me to go in politics. I'm clean and clear. Give me a chance. And he says like, yeah, I've seen 5 of you like that. And they don't believe it. So I think the way to change that is by example and by communication, because there is lack of communication between the society and the politics.
Okay. We have less than 10 minutes left, and I see very many hands, so we're just going to try. But in back, because we haven't. People up front have a natural advantage here. Please.
Eva Ratzenaya, Vice President, American Chamber of Commerce, Director, Riga Graduate School of Law. I have a question to Mr. Asheradens. Next Monday, more than 20,000 teachers presumably will go on strike. And commenting this event, Prime Minister Karinc has said that this might not be the appropriate time to go on strike. Assumingly that you will be in the government, next government that is, what the next government will be doing about the situation. Thank you.
You're asking about strike,
yes,
or particularly or school system?
Strike. Of course. Yeah. Regarding strike is on Tuesday, let's say tomorrow, we'll be hearing of Minister of Education on government meeting, and then Prime Minister and Minister of Finance stepping in to negotiations with trade unions, and it looks like there is some idea of a package how to find solution on this issue. Okay, in back.
David Svet, representing Baltic Landlords, and my question is to Mr. Birskens from Progressiva. How do you plan to support the real estate developers who aim to implement the circular economy in the regional development projects? Thank you.
Yes, it's a wonderful question. We just last week we had an excellent discussion with the Real Estate Association, the Alliance. Of course, in the Riga City Council, we have put in place the Green Corridor, something that aims to simplify the different procedures, and especially for well-minded developers, both in terms of the housing market, office spaces, we would like to create a red carpet to such investment. Again, unfortunately, the suspension of the Riga Development Plan puts many of these plans on hold. Increasing housing availability in the regions is critical. Just a moment ago, we discussed mortgages. It is not so difficult to get a mortgage in Riga and the broader Riga municipality, but the further you go away from Riga, the more difficult it is to obtain a mortgage. So Altum also has a very, very significant role to play. Another possibility is using green procurement. We actually want to institutionalize a fund that helps create housing in the regions. And green procurement, which of course supports the use of local materials, of course involvement of local companies, is one way how we can do that. But housing in the regions is absolutely critical, not least to address the employment issue as well.
Okay, we're running out of time. I know Mr. Zarinc has to run off to the next debate, so I'll have one more question and then we'll shut it down, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Florian from the German Chamber of Commerce. Title is Vision for Latvia's Economic Future. And so my question is, because attention span for outside investors is minimal, you have 3 words, yeah, to shout to foreign direct investors, what can Latvia do better than any other country in the world, yeah? 3 words for each candidate, if possible.
That's 3 words, we have time.
A bit of a statement, but also a question, but maybe we don't have time to discuss it. We are going into multiple crisis mode right now, but let's please not forget that any added value or growth for economy of Latvia will come from export, not from internal market. So please keep in mind how to support and keep supporting your small and medium enterprises, or also the larger ones, to go to international markets and continue exporting, even under difficult environment. Thank you.
Okay, this is our little time to make a TikTok video. You have 3 words. What is Latvia better at than anything else in the world? That was the question. 3 words.
Not 3 words. It's
I'm sorry. No. Well, I'm sorry. We're out of time. Mr. Valainis, 3 words.
One sentence. We have to look at the best, maybe at Germany, and we have to try to do better.
Mr. Briškans.
AmCham has to become the Latvian KFV, and Latvia needs to invest in renewables, wood construction, and cybersecurity.
Mr. Zariņš.
Hello. That's what I told. We propose a new deal between power and business, and I explained what it means.
Mr. Pabriks.
Through my prism of defense minister, I was offering German investors and industries 500 million possibility in last 5 years. Nothing was taken. So from that perspective, there simply must be somebody who listens to our proposals. I would like to combine our industry with our innovations, with investments, and there will be a great export. Patria is an example for that.
Mr. Votans.
So 3 things. The first, digitalization in all levels in private sector. Second thing, education together with the labor market. And the third thing, rising capacity of LIA for the export, because now they're not motivated. If there's 2 persons and 1 person gets a company 100 million, and the other one nothing, they have the same salary. That has to be changed.
You see, that's what is happening usually in Latvia. Opposition has 3 words, they have 3 sentences at least.
You cannot explain.
Okay. Mr. Ashton.
Increase of investment, research and development, and bring together small and medium enterprise, which really exporting and academia to create, in order to create new products and high profitability products and services.
Okay. Thank you very much for that brief overview. Thank you very much for coming to this discussion. I think it's been very lively, interesting. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who came and who watched. So, yeah.